When you sent me packing down Green River Valley, I knew that if you couldn't then...
Happy holidays and welcome to Mile High Stash, the podcast that asks what 5 albums you would take to a remote Colorado cabin if you were stranded with nothing more than food, water, and a crank-powered Victrola. On the show today is a Colorado legend, Slim Cessna of Slim Cessna's Auto Club. But first, I want to talk to you about mushrooms, Colorado mushrooms. Not the kind you might think. These are grown right around here in Brighton, and I got to tour where they grow them, actually. They're as beautiful as they are delicious. You can make them with just about anything. Check out our Mile High Stash Instagram for some photos of Colorado mushrooms, which we've been cooking up around my house this holiday season. Anyway, Slim Cessna, the man himself, and his wonderful wife, Maria, drove about 2 hours from South Park to my place on a recent Saturday in Boulder to sit down and chat, and I was really honored. Not only is Slim largely responsible for what some call the Colorado sound or the Denver sound, Slim's an icon because he's been true to himself and his vision for so long. He's a believer, and I think you can take that a lot of different ways. I hope you enjoy my chat with Slim. And Slim Cessna's Auto Club is playing the High Dive in Denver again this New Year's Eve and the night before as well.
Show me what I'm really made of. More than fear, more than love. Oh, and set me free.
Colorado Mushrooms is a Brighton-based farm-to-chef operation that was founded in 2019 by 2 friends who have quickly found a home for their exquisitely tasty mushrooms at beloved Colorado restaurants all along the Front Range. More than half of the mushrooms in the United States come from Pennsylvania and can be weeks old before they reach your plate, but Colorado mushrooms are often served same-day fresh. Ask your favorite restaurants if they serve Colorado mushrooms, which include Blue Oyster, Lion's Mane, Black King, Pio Pinos, and more. Get in touch at coloradomushroomsllc.com or find Colorado Mushrooms on Facebook and Instagram.
I gave all I could. I guess living the bad life, brother, feels too good.
Yeah, the first thing that I wanted to ask about is what you were saying when you walked in, actually. It's just about nostalgia for Boulder, but then also why haven't you been here for so long? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're starting right now?
Yeah, let's do
Oh,
it.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, I had a great childhood here in Boulder and teenage years and starting my first bands in the 80s here. And so there is, but I don't want to say I forgot about it. It's just time. Well, I guess I did, and thinking about it, even while I'm picking the albums of, my End of the World albums, they're all from, my youth. They're all from the 80s, except for one, and I'll explain that later. But it's, but I don't have great memories of high school here or anything, but I have great memories outside of that. But it's interesting how and I think I still do that. I just move on and I don't really look back. But as far as, I moved to Denver and I started the Auto Club and then I did all these things and I've had children and I've had like an amazing, interesting life with, full of stories, and I just kind of forget about where, what brought me along the way sometimes, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I don't, it's not like I was captain of the football team and that was like the end of, sometimes people look back because that was the greatest time of my, of their lives. But, for me, my it's been this last year, like I've been married to Maria like for 14 months now, and it's just been like the highlight. So like I guess I so I guess I have nostalgia when it comes to music, but but nothing else, like. But it is nice to be back. It was fun to drive, through the hill on the way here, and
Right.
just like thinking about all the houses I lived there that are all torn down now. Like right off of Broadway there on 15th Street, the Bugs Bunny garage. I don't know if you remember that, but now it looks like it's townhomes or something. I don't know
Well,
whatever.
Unfortunately, Albums on the Hill just went out of business, which is really sad because Andy was there
Yeah,
for 30 years.
exactly. Yeah, and Munley worked there for a while. And
Oh,
that's
really?
kind of not how I met him, but where he was working when
Right.
I met him.
Yeah.
And I've spent, a lot of my youth in that. And Albums on the Hill, and then Trade a Tape, which was kind of right next door forever. I don't know if that's still there. I should.
No,
Trade
but
a
that's
tape.
way before my time too.
Yeah.
I moved here around 2008,
Okay.
and so there were some things that were staples around here that were closed, like a Cafe Greco Cafe Roma and
Oh, yeah.
Penny Lane.
Oh, yeah. I used to play shows at Penny Lane, like back in the
Nirvana
days. Yeah.
famously played there.
I know, it's so funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there used to be the train depot, which was by the Shell there. Like, where is that? Arapahoe and Broadway. There's there's that big
The band shell?
band shell.
Yeah.
I don't know why I couldn't think of what that's called, but there was like a train right there, and we used to do shows. Or the train depot was there, not the train. And they used to have a few cars, but then we could rent out the train depot to put on punk rock shows back in the
It
80s.
seems so foreign right now.
And then
like,
they moved the depot somewhere else. It's like over off of 28th, somewhere there's a movie theater there. And I think the depot now is kind of right across
Yeah.
the parking lot from whatever theater that is.
it seems so foreign right now.
Yeah.
The concept of there being punk shows in Boulder. I mean, I know that there are often indie bands that are going to college here and they put on house shows. And sometimes I go to those and I feel like a renewed, faith in life. Like it's so special. But then
Yeah.
they move away in a year or so.
Nah,
So there's not really like a rock scene or a punk scene here like there used to be.
there's like maybe we just got old. I don't know. That's how I always think. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't understand what the kids are doing anyway.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like they come to my shows, so like, what do I know? I don't know anything.
I want to go all the way back. You are such a staple of the Colorado music scene over the last 20 years or so, and even the trucker hat and the black and the boots, like you have, and the glasses and the beard. I mean, there should be like a bobblehead of Slim Cessna, because
Aw.
it's this.
That's sweet.
You're an icon, and so I find it hard, when I ask the question, what were you like as a kid? I find it hard not to think of like just a little Slim, like you would look exactly like you do right now. Like you would be like a few feet tall.
Yeah, I used to dress as a cowboy also then. I mean, but some of that is cultural. I mean, my father and, he's a preacher, but he always has worn cowboy hats. And I remember when we moved to Boulder, my father got a job at the church that isn't there anymore over on, I don't know. I don't even know where it is. East. Out by Baseline Lake somewhere over there.
Yeah.
But that's where I grew up also. And
Where were you born, Slim?
gosh, I mean, I consider myself, I'm all Colorado. I'm fourth generation. I just don't have the benefit of being able to say I was born here because my father was working for IBM out in San Jose, California, and that's where he met my mother, who's from Michigan. And but that was just a temporary place for him. And so when I was 6 months old, they moved to Colorado.
Yeah.
But my father's from here. He's from Boulder. He went to Boulder High. He grew up a block away from where we are sitting right now
Yeah.
on Juniper. And my grandfather's from Longmont, and my great-grandfather came here because of health issues, back in the turn of, not this last century, but the one before then, from Ohio. And so there are people with breathing issues and tuberculosis or asthma or whatever it was, they would tend to come to Colorado for the clean air, and I guess it worked for him because he died of old age right here.
That happened to Jimmy Rogers too, and
Yeah.
listening to your music, I wonder when you were first exposed to Jimmy Rogers or music like that.
Oh, I can't think of a time when I didn't know who that was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your parents were really into music?
I don't want to say that they were really into music, but I caught on. But my father was to a certain extent, and enough so that I was obsessed with everything. You know, like he was, like he would listen to country music, you know, on road trips, and we did have some records, and so I would just obsess over them. You know, as a child, just like staring at the Folsom Prison Blues album and being horrified and intrigued, and you know, with the sweat coming down his face, and just, I don't know, just from early on, I always knew what I was going to do. You know,
When you started to play music, first of all, when was that you started, you know, writing songs and wanting to perform? But then, was it immediately laden with, you know, Christian imagery and references?
probably, yeah, I would think so, because that certainly is where I've come from, and everyone who I've played music with, well, I mean, not necessarily now, but like at the time, like we were all in that same place. Like my second band was called Bloodflower, and that we started in either 84 or 85, I'm not sure, here in Boulder, and we were all living on the hill together, and just kind of scrappy, like street, I don't know, like just punk rock, but not, we didn't really call it punk rock then, so it's hard to, I mean, because it was more like Joy Division, and like, and we didn't call it goth either. It was back then. It was still called death rock. You know,
Death rock.
Yeah,
That's the first I've heard that.
You know, for whatever that is, like Sisters of Mercy and Joy Division, and you know, the Birthday Party, and whatever else we were interested in at the time. And I think that I'm scrambling, and I think I already forgot what the question is. I'm sorry.
When did you start to write songs and play in bands? It sounds like the early 80s.
Oh, yeah, early 80s. Yeah, so Bloodflower was with David Eugene Edwards from 16 Horsepower, and now Woven Hand, and Jeffrey Paul, who was also Denver Gentleman after that, and Phil Ross and myself. But we all knew each other because of youth type of church-related activities, and we were the ones who listened to interesting music, but we're still part of that whole culture and scene and background, you know.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it always kind of had that that foundation, I suppose. Like,
What did your parents think of your music when you started playing?
well, I think they were terrified of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine too.
But I mean, they're good now. I mean,
Yeah.
one of my jobs, well, actually, my primary job at the moment is just being in fair play with my parents. We're there. My parents retired there, and you know, built a house, bought land for $3,000 in fair play in the '80s, and built a home, and retired there. And so, you know, it's out in the middle of nowhere, and they're older. And my father broke his back a couple years ago, and so we just kind of, and that's right when COVID was happening, and my whole business got shut down completely. So it was an amazing blessing that I was able to be there. And now Maria has joined me there, which is like as far as like real life angels from heaven, like that is crazy. She had like an amazing life and just decided to do that take care of,
That's
you know,
wonderful.
help my parents, like. So anyway, but so everything's good. So we're up there.
Yeah.
But so I mean, they got over their issues with my music.
Yeah.
But I think over the years I made it easier for them. I like to hope I did.
Well, I mean, it seems like everybody rebels, and so I find it really interesting, that you were raised in the church and you start playing essentially rock music, but country and rock, and the first thing that you think to write about is Christian and inspired at least, and that fascinates me. But then I would assume that most of your audience is not actually Christian.
Oh gosh, no,
No.
I would say not. But I mean, not that I'm like judging anybody or
Yeah.
even thinking about that, or
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, it's just we just play rock clubs
Yeah.
just like everyone else does.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, you're great. Yeah.
I mean, I'm a believer, but that isn't like I'm not out trying to evangelize,
Right.
or I mean, and a lot of it, quite honestly, is I'm not as worried about it now as I used to be. Like I was just obsessed with country music all through the '90s. Like I have no idea what was happening in the world of music. Like I never knew what Nirvana was or how awesome they were until after that guy died. And it was all in retrospect, and everything is like I didn't know. I was just pouring through albums and listening to the history of American music, and I was single-minded in a quest to understand what it was, and so much of it is gospel music, and that's just and I love gospel music, and I can talk about that with my albums later. Like it's like whether you believe in it or not, it's going to take you to another place. It's going to elevate you into a higher place, and that's just what it does, and that's what it's designed for. Like spiritual music throughout all cultures does that, I think, and there's
Right.
just something about it, And some people can say, well, I can get that same feeling at a punk rock show, and that's absolute truth, like you can, like it is in there, and I think that there is a spirit, and that God is in that, whether you're listening to David Bowie or Mahalia Jackson.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask you what shows you might have seen growing up that inspired what you would become as a performer, but I'm also assuming that some of that answer might be church.
Yeah. Probably. Well, the church I grew up in wasn't really, I mean, there was a church choir, but it wasn't like we were here in Boulder and a bunch of white people,
Yeah. They weren't stomping their boots around.
Yeah, it wasn't, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I listened to, like, I didn't know, like, even like how I was just saying about the 90s, I didn't know anything about what was happening culturally with music in our country, but also when I was a kid in the 70s, and I loved music. It was the most important thing to me in the world, but I had no idea what was happening in pop music.
Right.
Or on the radio, and so I listened to Christian music, and I still love some of it, but Christian rock, like this guy named Larry Norman. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but it's really interesting. And he was kind of a rebel, and he terrified my parents, but he sang rock music.
Yeah.
And he was rowdy, and he had really long blonde hair, and he wore like a leather jumpsuit, and but yeah, I was obsessed with that dude.
When you say country, I mean, and that you were obsessed with country as a kid,
Both things, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
I'm assuming that it wasn't Garth Brooks and Alan Jackson. You were
no.
going way back.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
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 Jimmy Rogers, Carter Family.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
What was your favorite of all those?
I mean, it's kind of always easy to say because everybody likes it, but for me, and it still stands, like, Johnny Cash, like, you just can't because even in the end of his life, he was still an artist. Like singularly, that was the importance of it.
Yeah.
Like there were a few decades of some bad music before he did like the American recordings, but he just didn't know how to do it at that time. He was probably invested in other things and having a family and just kind of making music. But then he became an artist again, you know, and it was pretty impressive what he accomplished. But of course, everyone loves Johnny Cash. But I love the Carter family. I love those old gospel, the old country gospel music is amazing to me.
And it was obviously a big influence on Slim Cessna's Auto Club.
Oh yeah.
You know?
As a lot of things were, you know, Dead
Yeah.
Kennedys were a huge influence. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I can go on. Like, there's Joy Division, like,
Yeah.
like, in country gospel music. And
Well,
I
let's
think
get
that,
let's get to the Auto Club in a few minutes. So
Sorry.
I want to ask you, you know, the basic premise here. It's kind of a spin on the desert island question, you know. But if you were stranded in a remote cabin in Colorado, you could probably imagine. Maybe it would be in the area where you live.
yeah,
But,
might be the place where I live.
yeah. Unfortunately, you'd be completely alone in this situation.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't know what had happened to your family and friends, but you would have, you know, enough food and water for indefinitely and a crank-powered Victrola. And you get to bring 5 vinyl albums. So
Yeah.
what is the first album you would bring?
Yeah, I might have to. I don't think I need notes because it's hard. It's hard to pick
Yeah.
5, and so like just sitting here right now,
Mm-hmm.
like I had to look at all my albums and remember.
Yeah. You
But-
looked at your collection in your house?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
Nice. That's great.
but the first one is well, I don't, and there's not necessarily an order, but I'll start with Violent Femmes' Hallowed Ground.
Oh, great.
Because and it's interesting because, and I think that somebody was joking and kind of being a smartass about this, but on a social media, this was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, somebody tagged me in a post that would say, would Slim Cessna even exist if not for Violent Femmes' Hallowed Ground? And at the time I was like, oh, come on, what are they talking about? And I
Right.
should have responded, you know, and like, and whatever, like, but then thinking about it, like, that's, I mean, of course I would exist, but would the music that I make have been the same without that record? And that's one in particular, one album. And, you know, Violent Femmes are great. Like, you can say great things about every album, but this one, their second album, it's like the greatest album of all time. And I think that I have to be honest and say, yeah, I think that record has influenced me more than anything that I've ever heard, you know. There's like one of the most beautiful and bizarre, like, murder ballads, you know. That's how the album starts, you know. And then it moves into like unironic gospel music.
Right.
Like, and that's the part that I love, and that's the part that I loved then. There's no irony. There's no like, you know. It's straight, like, this is it. This is our song. It's about Jesus,
Yeah.
and we just played a murder ballad, you know. And that is, in essence, what American music is. Like, that's the stories and well, murder ballads and gospel music. That's the history of our music, you know, as far as, you know, folk music goes.
Right.
So it's pretty cool.
I
Really
saw-
great album.
I saw a video recently that was the Violent Femmes at Woodstock '94, and I forgot that they played, because you think of the famous Nine Inch Nails set where they're covered in mud, and then
Yeah.
Green Day and all that.
Yeah.
But actually, the first night, I believe, one of the prime sets after the sun went down on the big stage that had, I don't know, 200,000 fans there. The Violent Femmes were absolutely commanding this audience. And when you were talking about, whether it's music directly about God, it can still be spiritual, even if they're singing "Dance, Motherfucker, Dance" and all this stuff. And
Yeah, it's so cool.
I could see how that stage show as well, not just the music, but the way they performed would have been an influence in some way on you. Did you ever see them play when you were growing up?
Yeah, I've seen them, 3 or 4 times. Auto Club opened for them at one point, way back in the 90s. I remember, I don't remember what year it was, but it was pretty early on, and the Bluebird, I know, had just opened as what it is now. And so
Right,
it
it
was
was a movie
probably in
theater
like
a long time ago.
95 or 96.
Yeah.
And we had a show at the Ogden opening for Violent Femmes, but then we couldn't stay to see them because we also had a show with 16 horsepower at the Bluebird down the street, and so we had to leave. And I wasn't able to hang out with them or anything, and I remember being so disappointed about that part. And I'm shy anyway, like culturally, socially, just so awkward. Like I have such a hard time talking to people, like in a situation. So I probably wouldn't have even introduced myself. I'd just like stare at him awkwardly.
I always think of that Neil Young line from On the Beach where he says, "I need a crowd of people, but I can't face them day to day."
Yeah.
She still had them crossed eyes as I dug her crooked grave. This is how it's always been. This is how we do things in the country. This is how it's always been. This is how we do things in the country.
So, Bloodflower, and then how do you get from that to Slim Cessna's Auto Club?
Well, Bloodflower, and then there was Denver Gentleman, which basically was Bloodflower, but we changed the name, and I was playing drums at that time, and and kind of a co-singer with Jeffrey Paul, and they had already been playing. Well, there was like people moving around, like a couple guys went to California. I was in Boston for a little while, but then we all kind of ended up back in Denver, like early 90s, like 1990, I suppose, is when Denver Gentlemen started. And I think that would be like a place where people would point to, like, and I don't know, it sounds like I'm just being so full of myself in it, but like there's this thing that people talk about called the Denver Sound, and so I think that we look at that, like, and then that kind of split off to be like 16 horsepower, and then I did the Auto Club, and Jeffrey Paul kept Denver Gentlemen going for a little bit longer, but for whatever it's worth, I don't know, like, yeah, so it moved into that, and then I decided that I didn't want to be a singing drummer, so I learned 3 chords and made the Auto Club, like 92.
92.
I think. Yeah.
And then Munley came later, right?
Mm-hmm. Munley and Dwight, and thank God for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They 98, I think. They came, and Rumley also. John Rumley was a huge part of how the band progressed into what it is now, though he's not playing with us anymore. But yeah, he joined in like 96 or 97, I suppose.
When did you make your first record? I think you have about 6, right?
I don't know. I don't know how many.
There's no fact checking
Yeah.
allowed here.
I think we have a few more than 6, but there's different. It's hard to.
The most recent one,
Yeah.
The Commandments, is the most recent one, right?
Yeah, and we're due for another. We are working on it at the moment, even. Hopefully, it'll be finished soon. But the first Auto Club record came out in '94, I think.
Did you have a label, or did you do it yourself?
No, we did it ourselves. And that, then we were with Alternative Tentacles, our next album was on Alternative Tentacles in 2000. It came out, and that was, and then we were with them for about 15 years, and they re-released the first one that we had put out ourselves.
Right. And did you get to establish a relationship with Jello?
Yeah, very much. I mean, he was, well, I would say that he still is a family. We left the label and started our own label in 7 or 8 years ago, maybe.
SCAC Records?
Yeah, and that didn't go well, and we probably didn't do everything right, especially when we're dealing with someone who is like family and has become that. So, I mean, so hopefully he'll remember that we love him.
Yeah.
Someday.
He's actually, everyone thinks of him as a San Francisco guy, but he's kind of a Boulder guy.
He's a Boulder guy, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how we know him. I mean, because he would, come to visit his family here in Boulder, and then he would always try to see shows in Denver, while he's visiting family, and
Yeah.
and he just started coming to see us play,
How soon did you start touring widely? Wildly and widely, I guess.
Consistently, as far as like of course the last couple of years, like that totally crashed, but like we're just starting to figure that out again now. Doing that consistently, where that is that's the drive, and that's like how we're all trying to make our money and doing, with that, 2000.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I've been touring nationally since 1986 with Bloodflower.
Yeah.
Before that, and then Denver Gentlemen. I don't think we ever toured, but Auto Club did a few tours before 2000, but really we didn't get rolling until we were with Alternative Tentacles.
Do you feel like you're almost more well-known in Europe than in America?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was on tour with Gasoline Lollipops. We actually opened for you a few times, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I know, and I'm sorry, I'm so socially weird.
Well,
I probably didn't say anything.
that's all right. I just felt like I was at church, and everybody who we talked to, like from the drivers of the vans that we had to people at shows all over Belgium and Holland, they were just like, "Oh, do you know Slim Cessna's Auto Club?"
Yeah, it's kind of weird, right?
How did that happen that
I don't know.
you established such a fan base over there?
I think that, that was, I think, because of 16 horsepower going there and establishing it first. And not like, I don't think that we're necessarily riding on their coattails, like we weren't it wasn't like anything nefarious of us, like, yeah, well, I used to be in a band with them, but people there, like, were so obsessed with that band that they researched everything about it, everything about, like, who was in bands with him before, right. And then there was already kind of a thing called the Denver Sound that a writer, I think in San Francisco, had started that whole thing, and I might be completely wrong about all of this, but we didn't really have to do a lot of work like what we had to do in the States for that. Like, we just went there and it was already like, oh, it's the guy that used to be in Denver Gentlemen with Dave, type of thing. And it just worked. And then we got on a label called Glitter House Records over there, and kind of, I suppose it's like a sub pop of Europe, and that was helpful. But that's also the label that does Woven Hand, and so it just kind of everything just worked that way. And so I'm thankful for those guys for helping it make it easy for us.
Right. They paved the way a little bit.
Yeah.
It saved our asses on that tour if we would play a Johnny Cash song. And well, but especially if we would play Country Roads by John Denver, there were some places that were full of like, soccer hooligans in Belgium. And we felt like this place is about to pop, in a bad way. And then we would play Country Roads and everybody's singing along. You also went to Russia to play, didn't you?
Yeah,
What was
we
that like?
have. We've been there twice, and that's a huge part of like our business. Like it became, financially, like you wouldn't think that like having to get on an airplane in Amsterdam and flying to Russia would actually financially save a tour. Like, but it's just a very.
How did that come about?
I think that came about because of Munley. People and whatever social media they were using, somehow some of his work in writing and some of his other records with the Lupercalians and the Lee Lewis Harlots before that, and just caught on. Like, and so Munley became like this personality in Russia.
Wow.
And that's another one where the rest of us were just tagging along, like they're all there to see Munley, and it was great. Like,
What kind of places did you play? Were they clubs?
yeah, we played clubs. I mean, like mid-size. Like it's not like we're filling, like,
Like the Fox
I mean,
Theater
I
size.
think, I think that our first show, the Auto Club went there to play, and I would guess it was capacity 300, and it was sold out.
Yeah.
And then DBUK went a few years later, and we played. The first show sold out, and so we had to play 2 shows in a row in one night, like
Wow. Like a
in
matinee or-
Moscow, and then we also went to St. Petersburg. So we've only played those 2 cities, but it's interesting and it's sad, like because I mean you've been all over the world, and like everybody is the same, like everywhere we go, I mean there's like obvious cultural things and there and language, but we're all just people just trying to figure it out, and it's just sad. Like the whole, I mean, I'm not gonna. It's sad that we won't ever get to go again. Like it's done.
And you
Like,
can't blame the people.
You can't blame the people that go to the shows. No, and I know people there who we don't hear from anymore. Like promoters that were anti-war, and now it's on social media, and then all of a sudden it goes dark. Like I'm not trying to say one thing or another. It's
don't
just
know.
a bizarre thing that happened, and this, like, how archaic is that too? Like that whole like bloodbath, like the whole, I just can't wrap my head around it, that this is still happening. Like, and people who I know, are like involved, are like probably had to go fight and
Right.
shit like that. Like, whoa, that's just crazy to me.
I
And
wish
it's
there was
sad.
something we could do to just end the war. To just end it.
But it's sad for me personally, and us, like we, Munley and the Lupercalians, that was part of. They just returned from Europe, and that was going to be one of the shows. But this was obviously before the war started, and then it was, now it's over, so we'll never be able to go again. Which, I mean, that sounds like.
You never know.
Like whatever, like,
You might
but
be
who
able-
cares? At the same time, why would I want to go again too? I don't
Maybe you could
know.
play in the Ukraine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a thing that was starting to get built. We have people there. We just hadn't played there yet.
Yeah.
It's interesting that further east in a way, like that we got, like, Serbia and I mean Czech Republic is a huge part of our world, and Poland, and and we just kept trying to go further, like out that direction. It always seemed to get better the further that direction we would go, and I always wonder why that's how it is for us. 'Cause it's
Yeah.
not necessarily the case with other bands like, Netherlands and Belgium and Germany and those places are, which we love playing. I'm not knocking it. Like Belgium is like my favorite country in the world. I could
Yeah.
move there right now.
Have you been to Ghent?
I have, yeah.
I was just there with my kid last week, and I don't know why, but I just want to keep going back. It just feels like you're in another time.
It's just, yeah, it's crazy there, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're walking on streets that, from the dark ages, and it's amazing to me that it still is there.
Yeah.
The queen snake, or did the queen snake catch me? Get a gifted away. Gifted away.
I wanted to ask you, how did your relationship with Munley start, and what does it mean to you after all these years?
Yeah, Munley and I became friends before we were playing music together. He had Munley Didarhi, and Nick from DBUK was in that band playing trumpet in the 90s. And then I had the Auto Club, and we started playing shows together, the two bands. Here in Boulder, we played at the Fox with them. We played at the Boulder Theater with Munley Didarhi, and then also some shows in Denver. But it was kind of like with Munley, it's always been instantly like he was more family than a friend, and like a brother.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very active in with my kids. Like he was also like the babysitter for George and Amelia, and I don't know, and so it just kind of seemed to make sense that he should be in the band.
Did your songwriting click immediately?
Yeah, and then he kind of took over as the primary songwriter, and which is amazing because it's like, yeah, because that's his gift. We learned that I mean, it's not like it happened overnight, but over time we learned what our gifts were, like, and his is certainly as a songwriter, like way more than me, and I'll have a song here and there, but he'll write things, and this is something we don't talk about, and I can be completely wrong, but like for me to sing, like as if it is part of like his understanding, at least,
Yeah.
of me, and so
That's a symbiotic
and so
relationship.
it's very cool, and it's not just him, Dwight too, like and Rumley, like when the band was really starting to move, and when Always Say Please and Thank You came out in 2000, and then we just hit the road and kind of have been on the road ever since, like it was like because of those guys, like everything just clicked and finally came together, and I was able to let go, because I had been trying to be a country singer, and I was trying to figure out how to do it right, and I just wasn't very good at it, and I think the reason for that is because I've always been kind of weird, and I wasn't really like that, and so so it took like having these other people with me who were also like really interesting oddball people, where we were just like, well, who cares, like, and it wasn't spoken, but like we just dropped any idea of genre. And I think that is the most important thing, and of what we've been able to accomplish. It's made it hard in a lot of ways, because we don't fit into like any kind of club or group of music, And it sounds like I'm so full of myself, and I'm trying not to be.
You're
And
explaining how you found your sound. I don't think
it's like
yeah.
one of the greatest things that we've accomplished is not sounding like anything else, and being exclusively our own thing. But that also like doesn't work for record stores or Spotify or all of those things. It's like it doesn't help us to that we're the only ones, and so people have to discover us separately from how I learned how to discover music when I was a kid,
Right.
Well, this is like this and that's like this. And so like, and I don't think I'm being too full of myself to say that, that's something that we did,
Yeah.
And
It almost sounds like the Grateful Dead in a way. Jerry Garcia used to say, not everybody likes black licorice, but people who do really like black licorice.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of
Yeah.
like Slim Cessna's Auto Club too.
I think it is, and yeah, that's true. Like, and the people who follow us and appreciate what we're doing, they're like that. Like, and they kind of obsess over it,
They're going to keep paying attention.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily need all the marketing in the world because they're already sold on it. So number 2 choice of albums.
Oh yeah, let me see. I got to look in here. Oh, number 2 album. It's another 1980s album. Came out in 1980. Joy Division. Closer. It's like, it still holds up. Like, I still listen to it. I still put it on my turntable, and like, I want to listen to a really great record, and so, of course, it's gonna be that. Even the cover is like gorgeous, and the music and the arrangements. It's just the most lovely, visually, the soundscape of all of it, and it still holds up. It's timeless, even though it's so 80s sounding at the same time. But it's not the kind of but it's not something that doesn't continue to work, throughout the decades, I suppose. It's just a very important record to me.
I keep hearing that name more and more. The Joy Division continues to be influential on new bands, and that's when the Velvet Underground's the same way. That they will always be influential.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I want to ask you a very specific question because I'm a dork. Okay. How do we do things in the country? What is the way we do things in the country?
Well, first of all, that's one of our murder ballads. So we don't really want to do that. We're not really like that. In case anyone's wondering,
It's a cautionary tale.
Yeah, it's a story about like. Gosh, what's the word? I'm having trouble remembering what words are.
Did Munley write that one? Or
Yeah, that's a Munley song.
Munley did.
And it's an amazing murder ballad because he takes that genre and he twists it even further and makes this guy the guy who's singing thinks he's doing the right thing, because of superstition, because of a deeply dark, religious, superstitious.
He has to bury this woman in a
Backbone.
certain way. Is that right?
Yeah, but he also had to kill her because of something that was twisted in the first place, and just because of
Because she had cross eyes?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it just affected him negatively. and then everything became crossed, everything had to work that way.
That was the first
Afterward.
song of yours that I ever heard, and it fascinated me. I wanted to know, about each line because it's a short story in a song. It's not just your average. But that's what they did back in the day with country music, with these albums, these songs that influenced you as a kid when that was all you wanted to listen to, right?
Right.
Yeah. Who influenced you as a performer to want to get on stage and really, you hear the term sometimes about a concert. Oh, it was like a revival. you know,
Yeah.
but your shows really are, like, that's not exaggerating to say that.
Yeah. And it's not like we set out to make a revival. I mean, so much of that is just us having a blast, you know, like having fun, like Munley and I doing a thing and trying to outdo each other and goofing off, you know. And then it kind of, I think that people say that it's like a revival, and I get it, and I'm not knocking it, but it's not like we're up there saying we got to make this a revival, you know.
Yeah.
When in really we're just having a kick-ass time, you know. Every night, like every show, like it's just a blast, and it doesn't matter how tired you are or whatever. Like, and also it's our job, like, to do that. But but I mean, it's interesting because I mean there was a certain time also in the 80s, of course. Like, but this was very influential for me, and part of how I became friends with Dave Edwards and Jeffrey Paul in the first place is we were all kind of obsessed about U2 together in the early to mid 80s, like with the first couple of albums, Boy, and then October, and then War came out, and then they played at Red Rocks.
Yeah, under a
And
Blood
so-
Red Sky.
Yeah, and so it's 1983, and I'm there with my friends, and we're right up front. You
Oh,
know, you
nice.
can see us in the movie. You
And it
know?
was raining, right?
Yeah, and it was just like, but like whatever you think of them, and I'm not like, I still those first three albums for me are still special. Like they weren't much older than we were. Like I always loved that, like that they were still teenagers themselves, and they were just reinvented how to play music because they weren't really that good at it, but then it changed the world of music. Like it wouldn't sound like it does now if that band never existed. And you can say that you love them or hate them.
Yeah.
And I get both sides, and it doesn't really matter. But like, it was kind of like a big deal back then, you know? Like, wow, like there's nothing like this that has ever happened in the world. Like music like this, and it's also spiritual. Like there are also like a lot of Christian references. So me and my friends could like really latch on, you know,
Right.
like, wow, that's really interesting. We're here at Red Rocks and it's raining, and that dude is like all over the place, you know, and he was a great, amazing showman, like especially to me at the time. So that would be a huge influence. And then I would also say the Talking Heads, seeing the movie Stop Making Sense was a really big deal for me at the time. And right around at the same time, within a year or two, you know, those two things happened.
Yeah.
Where like I could identify, like I wanted to do shows like that, you know. I didn't want to just stand there and play music. I wanted to put on a show. I wanted it to be something that would be remembered, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
beyond the music even.
It's so surprising to see, or to hear you say, U2 was such an influence, but it makes sense. And I think when someone is so ubiquitous, we forget that they ever did anything that was positive because we're so sick of them. But
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, I would love for them to go away so I can just have my good memories.
right, yeah, yeah. What's it like to play music with your son?
It's incredible. It's
Yeah.
great. Like, I mean, it always has felt like a family band anyway. Like, kind of the way we set it up and the way that, you know, like, and it just makes sense that he should be in it. Though he certainly doesn't have to. He's got his own things, and I'm going to even talk about it.
Snakes
as
is a
whenever.
really good band.
Yeah.
With a really good record,
Yeah.
for sure. I'm going to have him on the show for sure, too.
Oh, good. Yeah, because he's really good. Like, I always think that he's better than all of us as far as, you know, like, really crafting, like, these amazing songs. And he's such a great musician. Like, he's beyond anyone else. Like,
And he's known Munley probably since he was born, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So that's definitely like a family.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he has one tattoo, and it says "Doter made me do it" on his arm, and that's a Munley line. So he's pretty much.
Choice number 3 here.
All right, what do we got? Oh yeah, album from 1983, the very first Waterboys album,
Oh, wow.
and it's actually an EP. So it's a mini EP, and
They're Scottish, right?
yeah, and it's so cool because it is very similar, and it's also from the same time, but this one still lasts, and the Waterboys also didn't get weird like you two, but it's very spiritual, but mixed with like Scottish folklore and but then also like references to C.S. Lewis, who wrote the Narnia books, and like just all of the things that a young teenager trying to figure out, find his way through the world, like in the way that I was, and my friends were. Like, that album is just spectacular, and the site it's kind of saxophone heavy. Actually, all the first 4 maybe Waterboys albums are real heavy on the 80s saxophone,
Right.
but that doesn't, and it sounds like I'm being negative, because it can be negative, but also it can be like great, like David Bowie. Like, you can't not have saxophone on,
Young Americans.
on, and so it's like amazing, and so I'm not knocking the instrument, I'm not, but it can be a problem, and sometimes it's a slight problem for me on the Waterboys, but the first album definitely holds up, and there's only 2 songs on the second side. The first song is December, and the second song is Savage Earth Heart, and they're both like incredibly, like Odyssey of like Pilgrim's Progress of spirituality mixed with Scottish folklore and interesting things.
That's a great mix.
Yeah.
All of your albums are worth listening to, and they have great songs and great players on them. But do you feel like this last one, The Commandments, you guys took things to a different level? Like, it's pro in a way. It's not off-putting. It's not polished in a bad way. But do you feel like all of your experience of making albums up to that kind of came together?
I hope so. Yeah. I mean, we always think it that way,
Yeah.
like we try to grow, and we try not to be too repetitive. We don't want to just keep making the same sounding record all the time. We like to try to challenge ourselves. Because, I mean, we're artists, and we want to, or at least we try to pretend that we are. I don't want to, I don't want to pretend to, and so it's interesting to us when we can, when we can make an album that is interesting to us, and then we hope that people like it, and usually the people that follow us join us in that, like, oh yeah, that's really like, but yeah, and so I think that, at the time, it's kind of like, and our albums are so spread apart, like, there's years before we have another record, and oftentimes, like, we don't just put out records,
Right.
because we think we have to. Like,
It's been 6 years now, right?
yeah, it takes time to build and figure out, and then we also have other projects. It's like we made a Looper Colleans record, and that took us a few years, and that one's spectacular too, by the way. But and we're working on DBUK all at the same time. Like, we have all these other things that we're doing, so it always seems like it's forever since you've heard a record, but really, like, we do have other things that we're doing at the same time that we
It's a
just call
family
them
tree.
different
Kind of a
bands.
family tree of bands,
Yeah, and so it's kind of funny, but and so we don't, Like, yeah, and so it's like it was a different record than anything that we ever made, and we didn't really think of it like that because we're living it every day. But then when you look back, it's like, oh yeah, my kids really did grow in that 4 years, you know.
Right. Yeah. Did you work with a producer on that one?
We did it all ourselves,
Yeah.
and that was the first Auto Club. We attempted that
Yeah.
and learned a lot. And the next one, and made mistakes that we wish we could go back in time. You know, like
On the Commitments record?
yeah, like it would be nice to if we could have a little more time to. Because all of a sudden there was a deadline too, and we're doing it ourselves, and the deadline was because of a tour to Europe that was going to happen, and Europe is always really particular, as you probably know. You have to have like a record, you know,
You have to have something.
and
to
it
promote.
can't be from 6 years ago.
Right.
And like in the States, you can just get in the van and just go play shows, but there they have to have something, and so it was like, oh man, like, okay, so well, for whatever it's worth. I mean, I love it. It's I think we all do, but I think we also wish that we could have it back to finish better.
Well, in 20 years, you can do the remixed, remastered.
Yeah.
release. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the first one that you produced and engineered all yourselves?
Yeah, we all did.
That's fascinating because, to my ear, it's got the best drum sounds, bass sounds, everything.
Oh, good.
I mean,
Well, thank you for that.
It's not as garagey,
Wow.
you know. How do you keep track of which songs are which on an album? Because I know which ones I like the most, and I don't know how to refer to them exactly.
Yeah. We really like to mess with people. And that starts with Munley. He's really good at that, you know. Like I think that Cypher, our album Cypher, I think it came out in 2008, which I still think is our best work and really hard to top. You know, when you make something and it's like, how can we make this better than Cypher, you know?
Right.
And that's a feat, I think, for us, because that's our top moment, I think. But wait, why am I talking about that? Oh, but that was when, you know, Munley really went for it, and you know, we created our own cipher, and all of the text on all of the album is in a code, you know, and we tried even to get Alternative Tentacles to jump on board with us, and even allow their information to be in the code that Munley made, you know, of this cipher that you have to like try to figure out, like song titles and everything. Of course, all you have to do is put the CD into iTunes and it shows you all the right things. But they didn't go along with that. But we were able to at least put the album title and all of the songs in that code. And then when we re-released it on our own label, we were able to put our own label information in the code. But it's just like, I don't know, like I think people have come to expect those things from us now, and more often than not, that's because Munley is awesome that way, and he's just a very interesting. It's just, whatever. It's just great that I get to be in a band with him.
He's almost like the Neil Peart of the band, you know, the one writing these
Yeah,
songs for people to decipher.
creating other worlds and making us all go along on the ride with them, you know.
Have you had any sense of what actual, you know, fundamentalist evangelical Christians think of your music?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't know that world.
Yeah.
I'm not interested to know it. You know, it certainly isn't part of
Yeah.
my background or where I'm heading, and I'm not meaning that in a judgmental way. Like I don't see the world in the same way that an evangelical could.
Yeah.
And so like I don't know. I can't imagine that there have been many at our shows anyway, or even are aware that
Yeah.
who we are.
I was raised in a Catholic family, which means we were very, very religious in that you had to go to church, but we never talked about what was in the Bible. We had no idea. We had no education in that way. And so part of the reason that I find your music so fascinating is that there might be a lot of people out there who identify fiercely as Christian and maybe would see what you guys look like and what the music sounds like and think it was evil, bad, whatever. And then if they actually sat down with the lyrics, they would say, oh, this guy knows more about what I claim to be than I do.
Yeah, maybe. I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope that I can have contributed to helping someone not be so fundamental.
Yeah. I would love to hear a Slim Cessna's Auto Club song on country radio in between, the songs about trucks and girls and beer. Just all of a sudden, one of your songs. I wonder how it would go over.
You know what's interesting? I got to look at my phone to get the name of the bands, and it only kind of relates, but there's a tour that's happening, and you might know these bands, and I don't, and so I still haven't really looked into it. Obituary?
These are like death metal
Carcass.
bands. Yeah.
They are between those, so those bands are on tour, and I'm getting messages from people all over the country that says, and they're showing me videos of, I'm at Obituary Carcass, and they're playing, and it's all scack between the set breaks. So
Wow.
Their whole tour, apparently, they're playing the Auto Club between bands.
That's
And
really
so-
cool.
That's like pretty awesome. Anyway, I'll have to look into what those bands are, and I'm sorry if they're listening that I don't know, but I'm going to learn, and I'll be a better person.
Okay, so what is your number 4 choice?
Number 4, Bob Dylan's "Saved,"
Oh, wow. Yeah.
the greatest gospel record of all time.
Wow.
Like, when it came, so he had like a trilogy of gospel records.
Slow Train.
Coming, Saved, and then
Oh, I forget what the third one was.
Shot of Love.
Shot of Love, yeah.
And then I think after that he came out with Infidels. I think that's the right order.
I think you're right.
And then he was kind of a big hit, like on MTV and stuff, with Infidels, and had the Ray-Bans on the cover, and he was cool again, but still like with a very spiritual edge that he maintained after those very specific, in your face, like no fear. Like, I'm just going for it.
Yeah.
Like, he had an experience that happened, like that was real, obviously, because these songs are like, you don't just make that shit up,
I was only 1 or 2 when this album
Yeah.
came out, so I didn't see him on that tour, but I have listened to recordings of how he was really preaching on stage, too. It wasn't just that he was playing these songs.
Yeah, he was going for it all the
Yeah.
way. And I like I told you before, I wasn't completely in tune with what was happening in popular music at the time, though I was just starting. Like, I had already seen Devo on Saturday Night Live, and so I already knew that there were people like me in the world. That
Weirdos.
yeah, that it wasn't that it took, that there is like this other thing, and so I was very intrigued, and so that was pretty cool. But I remember I was with my mom. There was a Christian bookstore here in Boulder, and that's where I would get all my records. And the guy that owned the place knew that I liked kind of weirdo music and stuff. But so I remember seeing this record and not really. Of course, I knew that Bob Dylan was a singer and whatever, but I didn't know anything about Bob Dylan. And I went into the store, and he told me I should buy the album, that I would love it. And so I have the same record. I bought it in 1980, and it's like a life-changing experience. Like, it rocks harder than anything. Like, you can't deny the power of how hard that record rocks, you know? Like, it's
Why Saved of those three?
because it's the heaviest. It's really, really, I mean, they really pour it on. It's the greatest gospel record of all time.
Wow.
And the other two are great,
Yeah.
and this one is better.
Slow Train is pretty subtle.
Yeah.
You know, it's not as in your face what it's exactly getting on.
And it's great. Like,
know.
I mean, that electric piano sound on that album is so cool.
Yeah.
But then on Saved, it moves to like full on church organ. You know what I mean? Like, it goes from ding 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 to like wow, and that's so cool.
Touched by his word I have been healed, by his hand I've been delivered, by his spirit I've been sealed, I've been saved. By the blood of the Lamb.
How are you feeling about the New Year's show? You
Yeah.
guys pretty much always play New Year's, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's happening this year, but normally people even from Europe like come and it is like a thing, that we do. And of course, it used to be that we did it at the Bluebird. I think we played 10 New Year's in a row at the Bluebird until.
There was a Globe Hall one, right?
And then there
You
was
did
a
multiple
Globe
nights.
Hall one, and then we also played the Oriental a couple times, and and then we just ended up at the High Dive, and ended up. Forgive me, High Dive, we love it there.
It's the CBGBs
And
of
then we
Denver, it's
started
great.
playing it at the High Dive, and it's so easy for us to be there, and it's kind of like. It just kind of became our base, like after the Bluebird became AEG and things like that began to happen. They weren't really interested in tradition anymore, or in, like every show had to sell out and they had to make a certain amount of money. It became more about that than about a Colorado, Denver thing that had been happening since 1998, or whatever, and that people would come from all over the country and all over the world. And boy, it sounds like I'm being really negative about the Bluebird, but I'm not. Because I understand things happen. And, but High Dive's been awesome. We've been doing it there of course we skipped one of them because of COVID, and that was the first New Year's I had off, and probably since '98.
Was it weird?
Or earlier. Yeah, it was very strange. Yeah, it was weird for all of us. And then last year was interesting because there was a spike in COVID right as it was happening, and a lot of shows were being canceled, and we were trying to debate, like, what do we cancel? We didn't know what to do, and we ended up doing it. But attendance was way down, even though tickets had sold. Like, we made our money, but so I feel bad. But so hopefully these will go okay. We're doing 2 nights instead of 3, just to kind of feel our way back in to see what happens, But of course we're looking forward to. I mean, we always look forward to playing shows anyway, whether it's New Year's or any night, and always look forward to playing the High Dive. Yeah.
I mean, there are so few independent venues left. I believe the High Dive and the Oriental probably are it. There's HQ across the street now too, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We played there.
Which used to be Three Kings.
Uh-huh. Yeah. We played HQ like last, I don't remember when, last spring. Or maybe it was in the summer. It was great. Everyone was super great over there. Peter Orr and I don't know. It's fine. Yeah.
Do you have an intention on New Year's of in some way, carrying people into another year or a better life or something like that?
No. I used to have an intention of getting really drunk and enjoying myself that way with the audience, and I haven't been drunk in a year and a half, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I'm not going to be drunk.
Yeah. So you haven't been drunk your entire marriage, is what?
Yeah, I haven't.
Yeah.
I still have beers,
Right.
a couple beers here and there, but I used to be a drunk.
Yeah.
I feel like I was known as Slim's that guy that'll outdrink you at the bar,
Right.
after the show, and that was true.
Hmm.
And I think that I don't want to die anymore.
What saved you?
Hmm.
What changed you?
Just I realized I was just on a self-destruction path,
Yeah.
and all kinds of bad things were happening to me, relationships and all kinds of crazy things.
Yeah.
So I'm not, I don't want to make too big a deal of it, but so I was, I recommitted myself to my faith, and I stopped smoking after 38 years, and I stopped being a drunk.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
Congrats. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, and then somehow I don't think I was overweight, but I lost 50 pounds.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
I
that
can't
happened.
imagine you weighing more than about 140 pounds. So.
I'm pretty close to there.
Yeah. Okay. Fifth.
Sorry.
and final choice.
Yeah. Oh, fifth, yeah. So the fifth one is my son George. A year ago, I think it was about a year ago, when his album, his solo album, Lucky Rider,
Yeah. It's
came
good.
out, and I'm so proud of him, and I honestly think, and I could listen to it over and over and over and over again, and I have, and it's one of the best. Like, I love it how it's not made for Spotify and for individual, and that's what the Auto Club does too. It's like we make full albums where everything has a purpose and a place. There's a story not just within the song, but it weaves throughout the entire thing. And
Wonder where he learned that from.
and say it's an album. It's an album lover's record to
Yeah.
to sit there and put your headphones on and close your eyes and go through the entire experience, and it's just absolutely lovely.
What is George's age?
He is 31.
31. Yeah. I mean, he definitely seems like somebody who's going to continue doing great things.
Yeah, I
and
think
just-
so, because it keeps getting better. Like, all of his work gets better.
He's clearly influenced by his experience of having not only having you as his father, but making music with you. But his voice doesn't sound like yours. He's got his own thing.
Yeah, he's got like this Lee Hazelwood thing happening, like in the tone and the timbre, like it kind of sounds like me, but mine goes into this other place, and his goes down, like
Yeah.
in a lovely Lee Hazelwood,
And he's on the bill for both New Year's shows. Is that right?
just New Year's Eve he'll be
Yeah.
playing.
And that's Snakes, right?
And that will be his Snakes.
Yeah.
I am looking for the voice that used to tell me I was fly.
How far along, or what are the plans of writing and recording another SCAC? Or you referred it to as SCAC, which I liked.
Yeah, we are working on it now, and we have been for quite some time, a couple of years, but all at the same time of recording the newest Looper Kalian album that came out last summer, and a new DBUK album, and it's all part of Munley's Looper Kalia and a series. So it's going to be a 3-album series, and the Looper Kalians released the first, Auto Club does the second, DBUK will be the third, and hopefully we'll be finished with ours soon.
Yeah.
And it comes with like a book of the lyrics, and it's all about all of the characters that live in Munley's Looper Kalian world and in his head, and so they're all songs about specific characters.
This is really exciting.
Yeah.
So you think maybe a year from now it might be out?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully sooner, but
Thank you so much.
And we're doing it all ourselves too again. And,
Yeah,
and
well,
have learned from
it worked out
things.
last
Yeah.
time. Thank you so much for driving all the way.
Oh yeah.
I guess I would say up here, but it might be down here.
Oh, we're down. Yeah.
Yeah.
I said up though too. I think maybe because it's slightly north of where we are, but yeah.
Right.
I live at 10,500 feet. So.
Man. In South Park.
Yeah, just south of Fairplay.
I appreciate it so much, and I had such a blast talking with you.
Yeah, likewise.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll give you another hour, then I gotta run, I gotta fly away.
Thanks for listening to my interview with Slim, y'all. Or Yins, where I'm from. Slim Cessna's Auto Club is playing 2 shows at the High Dive in Denver for New Year's weekend, as we talked about. And I just hope everybody has a great Christmas and Hanukkah. Follow Mile High Stash wherever you listen to podcasts, because we have some great episodes coming up with, hope they're great episodes. They're great guests with members of Los Lobos, the Lumineers, Murder by Death, Devotchka, and more. Be safe out there. The bells will be ringing out for Christmas Day by the next time we talk.
Everything will fall. I wanna go back to Montreal.